The Vision to Action Symposium series on sustainability in the built environment is an ongoing series of regional conferences that facilitate provocative, strategic conversations around bold, visionary initiatives gaining momentum in specific regions of the Pacific Northwest.
The following presentation is from the March 5, 2015 Vision to Action Symposium at the University of Washington, Tacoma. The topic was Adapting to Low-Impact Development, the New World of Stormwater Management. In this video, Dylan Ahearn, environmental scientist at Hererra Incorporated, discusses the role of engineering, science, and research in advancing technology and showing the effectiveness of new bioretention soil mixes developed by the Department of Ecology for successful low-impact development. To see all 9 videos in this series, visit www.vision2action.us.
Here we go. Who's ever heard of Village Homes in Davis, California? Oh, there's a few of you. The first and best LID development in the country. 1960, it was planned. Mike Corbett was a landscape architect, put it together. And it was done out of whole cloth. You know, they had a farm field, and they had good soils, and it was flat. And they used every tool they had. They didn't have all the tools back then. They didn't have permeable pavement, but they full dispersion trees. They have really narrow streets. They have little bike paths that connect all the houses instead of roadways. And there's beautiful little children riding bikes on those bike paths. Really nice place. And so what we're trying to do today is take a lot of those same tools that are pretty easy to use. Biomimicry isn't that hard if you have that type of template. And we're trying to use it in an ultra-urban environment, or we're trying to use it in these sites with tough soils and slopes. And when we do that, we have to do a lot of engineering, right? Before, Mike was a landscape architect. He could do that. And they're smart, they're good, but we need some really strong engineers. We need continuous models. We need to optimize, right? But when we do this optimization, there are ramifications. Some of them good, right? Sometimes we figure something out and it's great. Some of them bad. And sometimes we put something in and we use sort of the standard practice, best standard practice for our time, and it doesn't work. So at Hererra, over the past 10 years, this is what we've been doing. We've been designing these systems, and then we've been monitoring them, and then figuring out what worked and what didn't work. The engineers at my place of work, when they get something wrong, they're pretty upset. I'm actually happy, because I'm the one doing the monitoring, and I think that's when we learn the most, when something goes wrong. And so really what I'm going to talk about today is bioretention and permeable pavement. Those two are two of the LID technologies that are going to be used the most in these ultra-urban environments. And we're learning a lot about these systems right now. So what we've done in the bioretention world first is back in 2005, when the LID manual, that edition of the LID manual came out, they were looking for a spec for bioretention soil media that had really consistent hydraulic performance. Because the issue before was it was a loamy sand was the spec roughly. There were specs across the country all over the place, and you just didn't really get predictable performance. You had ponding sometimes, and sometimes it drained too fast, and you maybe didn't get good treatment. And the worry is that if we're going to make work LID into our regulations, we had to have a system that worked consistently, hydraulically. And so in the 2005 manual, Curtis and Bruce, I think Table M as well, Bruce was involved in this. I was like, yeah, Table M. I'm a Table M too, sorry, that's why I'm calling it out a lot. It's a good table. They came up with a spec of 60% sand and 40% compost. And this worked great. It was consistent every time for infiltration rates. I don't know, 6 to 12, somewhere around there, 2 to 12 inches per hour. At the time, they were thinking, bioretention, we're going to put it in, it's going to be great. When we're doing it today, we're trying to shoehorn it into all these places, and more frequently, we're putting them in with under drains everywhere, and sometimes even lined, and sometimes on really tight soils. They're essentially not infiltrative systems, and there's just water flowing out the under drain. They're essentially just filters with plants in them. And so when we build them that way, we have to look a little closer at that bioretention soil media, and what are the chemical properties, not just the hydraulic properties. So we did this study in Redmond, and at the same time, Curtis was doing a study at the WSU LID research facility. Who's been there or heard of that facility in Puyallup? Yeah. And so here are some of those results. I'm going to walk behind my panelists here to make it even more uncomfortable for them. And we have our influent here. This is for total phosphorus. And this is the effluent for these 4 different mixes that Curtis looked at. Here's the 60-40 I was talking about. They all have compost in them. They're all exporting phosphate. And here are the results from Redmond. Way up there, we have our influent in blue, effluent in red. The effluent's higher than the influent. That's not what a filter is supposed to do. So what we wanted to do is look at a bioretention soil media spec that might perform a little better chemically, but also grow plants and also have good hydraulic performance. So this is what we're doing right now. There's Curtis. He's doing a study at Seattle University, and a column study. This is a great column array. Really proud of that one. And here are the results from that. In the red, we have the 60/40, and this is, we have dissolved copper this time, and it is exporting, that's a lot more, that box plot, than all these other ones. These are, again, different media we're looking at. A lot of these have sand and coconut coir in them instead of compost, and then some magic fairy dust thrown in with diatomaceous earth, biochar, GAC, some activated alumina even, some exotic things. But they're performing considerably better for dissolved copper. Similarly for phosphorus, performing a lot better, a lot less phosphorus export. The question is, can they grow plants with that not much nutrients in them at all? And so we're going to continue to see if that's the case, if they'll grow plants. Okay, moving away from bioretention, now into permeable pavement. So right now, the ecology doesn't give enhanced water quality credit for a permeable asphalt. And so Curtis has been looking at the water quality performance, not just the hydraulic performance of permeable pavement, but water quality at WSU, and these are some of his results that he wanted to show. He has impervious cells versus permeable cells, and the permeable cells have an elevated underdrain right under the wearing course, and then a bottom underdrain right under the gravel subgrade. And so you'll see two underdrains and the surface. So you can see really good TSS reduction. I think that number up there says 96.64% reduction for TSS, most of it just being in the wearing course. 84% reduction in total copper. Again, a lot of it just in the wearing course. So these data show, and a lot of other data show nationally, that, and I think Art was pointing this out, that permeable pavement does very well for water quality. So that's good. With these two examples, what we've sort of seen is that on one end of the spectrum, we have a regulatory specification that maybe needs to be tightened up a little bit to get optimal performance from bioretention. And then on the other end, we have some regulations that aren't giving another technology enough credit. And so we're learning a lot, and we have learned a lot over the past 5 years. And with what we know today, I think we can safely say that LID is not only feasible, but is the preferred stormwater treatment mechanism in any given environment, along with given site conditions. And so with that, I think I'll just end it and pass it on.